Hi, I've been making content about GLP-1s for about 3 years now, since I first came across these compounds. I've been fascinated by the way they've been rolled out across the food and drink industry. And to be honest, with a few notable exceptions from the big brands, the response has been really a kind of wait and see response. And maybe that's justified. But I think the game's about to change with a novel compound that's coming out. And I really see that threatening many, many categories in food and drink. So I think we're getting to the stage now where kind of mainstream brands need to evolve, they need to change ranges and do things differently. And I'm going to unpack why that is the case. So broadly, in the UK, demand for GLP-1 is rising. We know that. The prescriptions of these medications are basically going to triple in the next 2 years. So growing from about 180 million at the moment to kind of best on 600 million by 2030. And the name to look out for is Retatrutide. We're going to call it Reta, seeing as the rest is a bit of a mouthful. And it's the fourth generation. So 2 generations on from Ozempic, 1 generation on from Mounjaro. Okay, really interesting. And of course, it's 4 years now since Ozempic was licensed for sale. And Reta is the latest drug to come out of that kind of weight loss engine of Eli Lilly, their development lads, and follows in the footsteps of Mounjaro, Ozempic, Wegovy. And this category is becoming a feeding frenzy for pharmaceutical firms. But it's the knock-on into food and drink that I'm really interested in. So Retatrutide is in kind of phase 2 clinical trials at the moment, and it's being evaluated for weight loss and metabolic health. So it looks like it's coming to the UK in 2026. And if you think about it, it's coming into a country where 5% of the country are using GLP-1s for a material chunk of the year, at least, if not all of the year. So I think for food and drink firms, now is the time to act. And let's look at the data. So in the US, where one person is using GLP-1s in a household, the total grocery spend is down from anywhere from 6 to 9%. So I think to understand the impact, we do actually need to take a brief segue into the pharmacology of this new compound to understand why it's different, and hence the threat that it poses to food and drink is more different. We're going to call it. To understand the pharmacology, Ozempic really works by activating what we call the GLP-1 receptors. These are small docking stations, if you will, in the body that enable us to download that compound and the body to metabolize that compound. Mounjaro, generation 3, goes further because it doesn't just target that GLP-1 receptor, but also the GIP receptor. So it's got 2 docking stations, Mounjaro, able to get into the body, and therefore it can have 2 distinct pathways, 2 distinct mechanisms of action. And Retatrutide, 4th generation, goes one further. So it targets the GLP-1 receptors like Ozempic, the GIP receptors like Mounjaro, and also the GCG receptors. And that's what means it's called a triple agonist. So in marketing speak, and you're familiar with this from the toothpaste world, triple action. It does this, and it does this. It cleans, it shines, it protects. It's that sort of a metabolism. Effectively, Reta's got 3 pathways by which it does give the body what it needs and get the weight loss impacts out. And I just wanted to unpick those 3 pathways because getting that is kind of key to getting why it's a threat to food and drink. So Reta is the first of these triple agonists, this new class of drug, to hit the market. And how does it work? Well, firstly, it boosts insulin sensitivity, which of course improves blood sugar. And then secondly, it reduces glucogen production, which helps to prevent excess glucose production. And lastly, it slows down digestion, which of course helps people eat less as they feel fuller for longer. So we could sum it all up, really. What's the shorthand, the TLDR, if you like, is it helps silence what we call food noise. And for many individuals striving for weight loss, that persistent internal dialogue about food, often referred to as food noise, can be a really significant obstacle in getting on top of, if you like, their diet. And this constant preoccupation with eating can sabotage even the best intentioned diet and exercise plans. And retatrutide shows great promise in not only managing appetite, but also in fundamentally changing one's relationship with food. And so, really, it's about multi hormonal signaling. All those GLP-1s, GIPs, GCGs, great to understand the terminology, but really, they're recalibrating the body's natural hunger and satiety clues. Users often report feeling more satisfied with smaller portions or experiencing fewer cravings between meals and a general reduction in the mental energy spent on thinking about food. And this shift allows for a more natural and less burdensome approach to eating, fostering healthier habits that can be sustained longer term, really. And compared to earlier weight loss medications, Ozempic, Wegovy, etc., retatrutide's enhanced ability to provide sustained satiety and reduce the mental burden of constant food preoccupation represents a really significant advancement. It's a bit of a game changer because it's starting to work on psychology, not just physiology. And by helping individuals regain control of their eating behaviors, retatrutide offers not just the potential for substantial weight loss, but actually the keys. It's dangling the keys for a healthier, more balanced lifestyle. And as this clinical research progresses, that therapeutic potential of retatrutide in addressing the behavioral aspects of weight management is becoming increasingly clear. And the trials have been really promising, which is why I'm really feeling, and most people in the industry are feeling, this is happening and going to be released into the world next year. So some participants have lost up to 24% of their body weight. And improved gut health, interesting how trendy gut health is within food and drink at the moment, seems to come as part of the treatment. It sort of comes along and piggybacks on the rest, as that GCG receptor activation looks like it helps with gut health, which in turn helps with nutrient absorption, adding an extra layer of benefit beyond just weight loss and blood sugar control. And obviously, blood sugar control in itself, the compound seems to promote metabolic health by stabilizing blood sugar, very important for preventing diabetes, but also key in the management of those with diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And it's not hard to understand why these compounds are popular, really, because it kind of does three things that I think is really important to the shopper. It empowers and helps people control. And if you dig into the research about people on these compounds, they say, well, the most significant change for me since I've been on these drugs is I'm now kind of silencing that constant preoccupation with meals and cravings. And I now have a sense of control. And this shift is supported by research showing that GLP-1 agonists can delay that gastric emptying and glucose absorption, which kind of makes them feel fuller between meals. Secondly, we might call it health security. That's the other benefit. GLP-1s are preventative treatment for long-term health management, not just weight loss. So if you like, the kind of Novo Nordisk Select trial showed that semaglutide reduced the risk of adverse kind of cardiovascular events, heart attacks, strokes, etc., by 20% in folk who are overweight. So not only does it allow people to drop the pounds, but there's a carry-on benefit to an improved kind of cardio risk as well. And then lastly, there's a kind of a softer benefit around kind of esteem or maybe status or perception, by self and others really, because GLP-1 use fairly obviously is closely tied to appearance, with many users reporting kind of increased confidence after weight loss and posting on social media and versus online communities, and kind of studies linking weight loss to improved kind of psychological measures of well-being and self-esteem, really. So what does it all mean for brands? What does it mean for people, looking to engineer products and ranges to get them fit for the future? Well, a couple of things really. I think, people on these compounds, they want smaller plates. Children's, portions, perhaps a little bit bigger than that for some, perhaps children's portions for others. really focusing on protein and fiber content in those meals, super important so that biologically they get what they need. The people are advised to resistance train and to do kind of cardiovascular work, running, steppers, ellipticals, rowers. So anything you can do to help people do that or power them up for that is helpful. And obviously, kind of, people on these compounds they need to attend to those psychological needs as to why folk are overeating. So again, anything brands can do to highlight the naturalness of products or portion control is really helpful. Because obviously the big concern that shoppers have is that they remain in the parlance, fat inside, and they rebound when they come off these compounds. And obviously that doesn't do anybody any good, other than the pharmaceutical companies, really. So I think this is a game changer. These triple actions. I'm confident Retatrutide will be released based on the research I'm reading. And it looks like these three different pathways, but particularly by silencing food noise, means that brands are going to have to work harder to cut through that. They're going to have to work harder to hook people in and to make sure that their brand is getting the currency, the bandwidth, and the airtime with the shopper. Okay, so really interesting, dynamics are happening in the market. And we are seeing resilient sales in yogurt, fresh produce, nutrition bars, and we have seen some new product development, kind of nutrient dense foods. That's where it's at. So I think, there are NPD opportunities for brands, whole foods, natural processing, perhaps methods like, fermentation or high fiber, hydration aids. These are very similar to the meta trends in the industry anyway, but they're particularly accelerated by the significant cohort of people that are going on these drugs and these compounds. So watch out for Retatrutide next year, and please hit me up with any questions. Thank you.